Why on earth do we live in a world where there's an Aquaman movie that has dinosaurs and a cover of Toto's Africa? Hello everyone, Justin here, and I just saw Aquaman. Um, the DCEU, or Worlds of DC, or the DC Cinematic Universe, or whatever people are calling it. I think the official name is Worlds of DC, but I'm not sure. Anyway, it's had a rocky history, a very, very rocky history. Man of Steel, I have very mixed feelings on. I know I defended it pretty heavily in my very first In Defense of several years ago, but my feelings have changed on it since then, and now I kind of have mixed feelings on it. There are things I like about it, and there are things I don't like about it. Batman v Superman is just a completely misguided film from top to bottom. I mean, everything they were trying to do with that movie, the entire direction and the entire angle that they took with it was just the wrong way to go. And plus they were just trying to cram too much into it to turn it into a cinematic universe, and instead of actually focusing on the story they were telling. Suicide Squad is a complete and total train wreck, but I love it. It's one of my biggest guilty pleasures. It's a horrible movie, but I still enjoy it when I watch it. Wonder Woman is the only movie in the DCEU, Worlds of DC thing, whatever, that I can say without a doubt is a good movie. And then Justice League was just passable. It was so disappointing in how passable it was, and it just crushes me that the Justice League movie, the big Hollywood Justice League movie that comic book fans have been wanting forever, ended up just being passable. Plus, you can really tell what was Zack Snyder and what was Joss Whedon, and Joss Whedon can claim that he was doing what Zack wanted the whole time, but I mean, there are clearly Zack Snyder parts to that movie and Joss Whedon parts of that movie, right? So the DCEU thing has had a very shaky history so far, so I was cautiously optimistic about this movie. I went into it saying, okay, DC does not have a very good track record with this whole cinematic universe thing. However, this movie has a great director, James Wan. I think he's a really very talented director, so it's got that. It's got Jason Momoa, who I think is a very good actor. Most people only know him from Game of Thrones, unfortunately, which sucks because he's fantastic in Stargate. So, it's got Jason Momoa, it's got James Wan, it's got a good combination of people. Plus, there's Nicole Kidman, there's Willem Dafoe, there's a lot of really awesome people in this movie. So I went into it cautiously optimistic. And yeah, this movie sucks. This movie sucks really bad. First of all, the story. I think what they were trying to do with this movie is Aquaman is the butt of many, many, many jokes amongst people who are not comic book people. Comic book people have been making jokes about Aquaman since the beginning. He's seen as the ridiculous, stupid superhero. Even amongst people who think all superheroes are ridiculous and stupid, Aquaman is seen as the absolute most ridiculous, stupid superhero by most non-comic book people. So I feel like what they were trying to do with this movie is they were trying to be like, oh yeah, you think Aquaman's so stupid? Well, we're gonna make him awesome. And they try so hard to make Aquaman awesome in this movie. They try so hard to make him badass. They try so hard to make him just this amazing, incredible person, and they try so hard to make the movie epic. They give these gigantic, massive battle sequences and these huge, epic, massive visual things. They try so hard to make this movie epic and amazing and incredible because they're trying so hard to rid people's minds of this image that Aquaman is this ridiculous, stupid superhero. And somehow that approach resulted in not only a film that is incredibly cliched, not like you can predict the plot of this movie like 30 minutes in. You can tell everything that's going to happen in the rest of the movie. Like, it's really freaking cliche. Not only that, but it's Black Panther. It's Black Panther Under the Sea version. I mean, the plot is almost identical to the plot of Black Panther. Just change who the characters are and what situation they're in. Like, there's a king, but there's a long lost relative that says, no, I'm the king, and I'm gonna challenge you to a fight, and if I win the fight, then I get to be king and declare war on the rest of the world. But if I lose the fight, then you get to be king, and we won't declare war on the rest of the world. And guess what? The hero loses the fight, and the bad lost relative is like, okay, now that I won, I'm going to declare war on the rest of the world, and now it's up for the hero to go on a soul-searching journey to figure out who he truly is and become one with the power within, or find the thing or whatever, and then he's going to come back and he's going to stop his relative from destroying the world. It's Black Panther! This movie is Black Panther! And I think a lot of people pointed that out based on the trailer. I remember hearing a lot about that based on when the first trailer first came out. People were already making comparisons to Black Panther. But seriously, this movie's plot is Black Panther. This movie is Black Panther ocean version. But that aside, if you've seen Black Panther, you can predict the whole plot of this movie. But that aside, it's just a really bad movie in general. I mean, the dialogue is horrendous. Like, it's horrendous. It's awful, awful dialogue. The performances are not good at all, even by the really good actors. There are some really good actors in this movie, and the performances just aren't great. The story has, outside of being a copy of Black Panther, the story just has so much of its own unique problems. There's so many things that don't connect. The Black Manta character that was heavily advertised in the trailers is completely superfluous to the film. He does not add anything to the story at all. If you took him out, the story could easily work without him. He does not add anything. Every minute, every single scene, every minute there is something to either groan at, mock, or just go, what? What? Now, normally I'll have like a spoiler-free section and then a spoiler section at the end, but this whole video is just going to be the spoiler section because I cannot properly critique this movie without giving away stuff that happens in it. So if you were planning on seeing this movie, I guess don't watch this video, but then again, I've already got your view anyway because it already got the view counter because you already watched this far. Anyway, so yeah, like I said, the Black Manta character is completely superfluous to the film. He does not add anything. I can tell that it's pretty obvious they're trying to set him up for the sequel because he's in the after credits scene, right? But this is a big problem DC has. They're focusing way more on setting up future movies than actually just telling the story that they're telling at the moment. Like, don't worry about what Batman's gonna do in 5 movies from now. Just focus on what he's doing now. Like, that's one of DC's big problems. And while Marvel does look ahead to the future, Marvel looks ahead to the future even more than DC does. They do it in a way where it doesn't feel like they're doing things just to set up future movies. It feels like there's a natural progression to the story. But with DC, they don't do that. And because DC always has to just cram stuff into movies that doesn't belong there just so they can set up future movies and just guarantee a franchise, they included this Black Manta character who's like one of the main villains of the movie, and yet he actually has very little connection to the main conflict of the film. He has a connection, but if you were to take him out of the film would still work. Like, he is not necessary at all. He is superfluous to the film, and the fact that he is one of the main villains in the film and that he was heavily advertised in the trailers, it's the Joker from Suicide Squad all over again. The Joker was very heavily advertised in the trailers for Suicide Squad because, of course, he's the most famous character that was going to be in the movie. And what do you know? He's completely superfluous to the movie. There is no reason that the Joker needed to be in Suicide Squad. Like, if he had just been in the flashbacks with Harley Quinn and nothing else, the movie would have worked fine. And I think that's what it should have been. I think he should have only been in the flashbacks. But that's another discussion for another time. one of them, when I don't want to be harping on this for too long, but when one of the main villains of your movie is superfluous to the plot, that's a problem. To point out every issue that this movie's story has, to point out every single thing in the story that doesn't flow or doesn't connect or doesn't make total sense, to point out everything would require a scripted video. So I'm not going to be able to point out everything, but there is a lot. There is a lot of stuff in this movie that just makes you either groan or laugh, and not in a good way. But like Arthur Curry, this character of Arthur Curry, the Aquaman, was a legitimately interesting character in the Justice League movie, and he's one of the only like really strong things about that movie, in my opinion. He was a really interesting character. I wanted to know more about him, and that was one of the main reasons why I was cautiously optimistic about this movie, because I wanted to know more about this character. He was interesting in Justice League. Yeah, in this movie, he's like a block of wood. Like, it's like they were like, okay, well, people really liked him in Justice League, so let's just keep him exactly the same as he was in Justice League and not have, like, any progression in his character at all, and let's just have him be exactly the same, and whenever something potentially emotional happens, we'll just have him not care, because he's Aquaman, he's a badass, he doesn't care, and emotion, that's for pussies. So they took a very interesting character, one of the few strong things in the Justice League movie, and they made him a block of wood, which sucks because, again, Jason Momoa, who's an actor I really like, and the fact that his character in Stargate, Ronan Dex, is such a well-rounded, well-developed character that you totally get, and that he performs so well. The fact that they took a great actor like that and they wasted him by taking an interesting character from Justice League and turning him into a block of wood in this movie is very, very, very disappointing. And there's the other main lead of this movie is Mira, who's like a fellow Atlantean woman or whatever. And of course, this movie subscribes to the logic that if there's a man and a woman in a movie, then they have to hook up at the end, right? You know, that old unwritten rule of Hollywood. And I don't have a problem with that usually, because a well-written, well-directed, well-executed romance is exactly that, a well-executed romance. But this movie, the romance is so forced. It's so forced. It does not feel legitimate at all. Anytime they have like a romantic moment, anytime they like start to lean in for a kiss and then something happens that interrupts it, anytime they just kind of stare at each other awkwardly, like you're supposed to be feeling that something's coming on, it never feels warranted. It never feels like, yeah, things have happened that would make them feel this way. No, it feels so forced. And I mean, give credit to Titanic. At least they took time to develop their interactions and have them interact so that they eventually fall in love. And Titanic is usually like the worst love story. It's like Titanic is usually the default bad love story that I go to as an example of how not to do a love story in a film. But I at least give Titanic credit. It actually put these characters in a situation where their romance and them slowly falling in love like somehow feels warranted, but it doesn't at all in this movie. It feels they just had to follow that stupid rule, that stupid unwritten rule of if there's a man and a woman in your movie, they gotta hook up. And I do not have a problem with that rule. Like I just said, a well-executed romance is a well-executed romance. But if you're gonna have a romance in your movie, execute it well. Not only is one of the villains in the movie completely superfluous, but neither of them are interesting. Not a single one of the two. That didn't begin. Neither of the villains in this movie are interesting. At all. They are both blocks of wood that have like one characteristic about them, and that is supposed to drive them through the film. That is supposed to make us, as an audience, intimidated by them and fear for our heroes. These villains in this movie are so boring, so uninteresting, so dull, so one-dimensionally, this is what I want and I'm gonna get it. and there are probably a lot of people out there who argue that all superhero movies are like this, but no, they're not. We've gotten superhero movies with legitimately interesting villains. There's Thanos in Infinity War. There's the Joker in The Dark Knight. There's there's Michael Keaton's character in Spider-Man: Homecoming. We've gotten legitimately interesting villains in superhero movies recently, and the fact that we've gotten to a superhero movies have a standard now. Like, not just Marvel, but other production companies have established now that it is possible to make a legitimately good superhero film. A superhero film that's not just about people with cool powers punching bad guys, but is actually a story about characters who go on emotional journeys and who learn things about themselves and go through arcs. We can have superhero films that are legitimately good films, like as films. We've established that there's a standard now, not just for Marvel. I'm not just a Marvel fanboy, like others have done it as well. So the fact that it's 2018, almost 2019, because it's December 16th at the time I'm recording this video, the fact that it's almost 2019, just a week and a half away from 2019, and we have a big budget, mainstream Hollywood comic book film on Aquaman, one of the most famous superheroes of all time, and the villains are just so dull and boring and uninteresting and one-dimensional, and one of them isn't even necessary to the plot. He's completely superfluous. This movie uses flashbacks a lot. Throughout the movie, there's flashbacks to when Willem Dafoe's character was secretly, without the knowledge of the Atlantean government, training Aquaman, training Arthur Curry. And these flashbacks, I guess, are warranted somewhat because they have to get this information about these two characters' history out somehow, but they come out of nowhere. Like, these flashbacks are not well integrated into the structure of the film at all. And that's not a writing thing, that's not a directing thing, that's an editing thing. Because as an editor, the great thing about flashbacks is that as an editor, you have freedom over where you can put flashbacks. Because flashbacks they've already happened within the context of the story, so you can place them really anywhere as long as you make the editing somewhat work in terms of the position. So they should have found other places to put these flashbacks, because the places they do put these flashbacks, they just come out of freaking nowhere, and they do not feel natural. They're no segue at all. It's just the story's moving along, and we're in a flashback now. Okay, now the story's moving along. Oh gee, I wonder what's going to happen next. Flashback. I guess we're in another flashback now. And one of the flashbacks shows a early 20s or so Arthur Curry, and the guy that they got to play early 20s Arthur Curry is a horrendous actor. He's awful. Almost, not quite Mark Wahlberg in The Happening, but almost. This is literally his performance in the flashback. What? You're telling me my mother's dead? No! Are you telling me I'm never gonna see my mother? What? Why have you been training me this whole time? That's literally his performance. He's a horrendous actor. And I don't know if it was just bad direction. I haven't seen this guy in any other movie. Maybe he's really good in other movies. I don't know. But I don't know if he was given bad direction, or I don't know what happened, but it's a horrendous performance, and he's just he's only in the one scene because we only see Arthur Curry at this age in this one scene. So he's really not, it doesn't really make that big of a difference in the film as a whole. It was just so horrendously terrible that I had to point it out. I just had to point out how horrendously awful this actor is, and I'm never gonna see my mother. She's dead! There are so many really stupid things in this movie. There are and all you non-comic book people out there are going to be like, oh, well, going into a comic book movie and expecting not to see stupid stuff? Oh, you simpleton. But no, like, there's a difference between actually stupid and comic book movie stupid. Comic book movie stupid is having something that no established logic of that world could possibly explain. Because people can look at Captain America having the super soldier serum and therefore being this super enhanced human. People can look at that and say, well, that's stupid because it's not realistic. Well, yeah, it's not realistic, but if they establish that it's possible in this fictional world, then I will accept it. But so, like, comic book movie stupid is different. Comic book movie stupid and comic book stupid in general is when something happens that no established logic in that world can explain. And there are a ton of really, really stupid things in this movie. Number one, there's a scene where an octopus is playing the drums. There's a scene where an octopus is playing the drums. Now, at first you would think, oh, Aquaman can talk to fish, right? So the other Atlanteans, they can talk to fish too. So they're probably just controlling this octopus and making it play the drums. But no, because they actually establish in the movie that Aquaman's the only one who can do that. He's the only one that can control the sea creatures. So that means that this octopus is playing the drums out of its own intelligence and its own free will. There's just an octopus playing the drums. Like I mentioned earlier, there's also a cover of Toto's Africa as they're flying into the Sahara Desert, and it does not fit at all. I think like my friends and I who were with me when we were watching the movie, we just started laughing out loud at how out of nowhere and out of place this stupid cover of Toto's Africa felt as they're flying into the Sahara Desert. There's also dinosaurs. Because there's a scene in the movie where they go to the center of the earth, and apparently it's a rule in fiction that when you go to the center of the earth, there has to be dinosaurs, because every movie I've ever seen, every book I've ever read, where the characters go to the center of the earth, there are dinosaurs. Apparently it's a rule in fiction that the center of the earth has to have dinosaurs. And so when they go to this movie, when they go to the center of the earth in this movie, there are dinosaurs. Now, they're blink and you'll miss it. They're more like dinosaur cameos, but the fact that there are even dinosaurs in this movie at all is just, but by far, the stupidest thing in this movie. The absolute stupidest thing in this movie. And it is so mind-bogglingly stupid that I honestly had trouble processing it after I saw it, and I'm still having trouble processing it as I'm recording this right now. The opening scene is these sea pirates that the Black Manta character is a part of. They're attacking this Navy sub, and Aquaman busts in and saves the day. Well, later on, Aquaman goes back to his home, to his father's home, to like catch up with him, hang out and everything. And they're at a bar, having some drinks, having a good time, when the news playing on the TV in the bar, the news anchor says, a Navy sub was attacked by pirates, and Aquaman saved them, and all that, just recapping what just happened to the audience. And experts believe that the pirates were using the secret government classified submarines called the blah 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 blah. Yeah! Secret classified government submarines. So secret and so classified that the news is talking about it. Heck, they even have the blueprints on the screen. They even have the blueprints on the screen on the news. Yeah, this super secret and super classified government high-tech submarine that's so secret and so classified, the news is talking about it and showing blueprints. My gosh, what on earth are you smoking to write something this stupid? This movie tries so hard to make you think it's the most amazing, incredible movie ever. The action sequences are so testosterone-filled manliness. Bam, bam. The battle scenes are massive and epic and gigantic. This movie tries so hard to rid your mind of the idea that Aquaman is stupid and tries so hard to be the most amazing, epic movie ever. And it ends up trying so hard to do all of that it does not put any effort into anything else. And as a result, it's a really bad movie. I think Aquaman is a really bad movie, and it does not give me pleasure to say that. It does not give me pleasure to say Aquaman's a really bad movie, because I really wanted to like this movie. I got very excited by the trailers, as I think a lot of people did. And when I saw the trailers, I was like, James Wan, yes. Jason Momoa, yes. This really, really interesting visual style. Yes, and visually this movie's amazing. Like, I saw this movie in IMAX 3D, and if you're going to see this movie, watch it in IMAX 3D, because the IMAX 3D makes the scenes that take place underwater in the ocean, it gives them this depth and this scale that just feels amazing. You feel how gigantic the ocean is in this movie, thanks to the IMAX 3D. And there are so many scenes in this movie, especially the big battle scene at the end, where it's eye-meltingly amazing at how massive and gigantic everything is, and how much depth and scale and weight there is to everything because of the IMAX 3D. So if you're going to see this movie, please make sure you watch it in IMAX 3D, because that's literally the only enjoyable part of my watching this movie tonight. The only thing I enjoyed about this movie was how good the visuals were thanks to the IMAX 3D and the musical score. I think the musical score is very good when it's not playing stupid stuff like the cover of Toto's Africa and a few other very odd song choices, because there are other very odd song choices in this movie. So when the music doesn't have lyrics, it's really good. So good musical score and good visuals. Those are like the only good things about this movie. I really wanted to like this movie. I really did, and it kills me to be saying this. It does not give me pleasure to be saying this at all, but Aquaman is a very bad movie and probably the worst comic book film I've seen this year, and it's unfortunate, but it is how I feel about the movie. Thank you guys very much for watching. If you enjoyed this, you can hit that subscribe button. If you enjoyed this but not enough to where you want to see more, then that's fine as well, and I will see you next time. Bye.